West Virginia holds layers of history beneath its hills and river valleys. From massive burial mounds built over 2,000 years ago to ancient campsites along the Kanawha River, these archaeological sites reveal how early native communities lived, hunted, built, and honored their dead. Each location offers a quiet but powerful look into a past that still rests beneath the Appalachian soil. Grave Creek Mound Archaeological Complex. In the town of Moundsville, in the narrow northern panhandle of West Virginia, there rises a massive hill that does not belong to nature. It looks natural at first. Grass covers it. The slope is smooth. Trees once stood around it. But this hill was built by human hands more than 2,000 years ago. The Grave Creek Mound is one of the largest conical burial mounds in North America, and it still stands today as a powerful reminder of an ancient culture that shaped the Ohio Valley long before modern cities existed. The mound was built by the Adena people, a Native American culture that lived in the region from around 1000 BC to about 200 BC. The Grave Creek Mound itself is believed to have been constructed between 250 and 150 BC. When you see it in person, its size is what strikes you first. It rises about 62 feet high and measures roughly 240 feet across at its base. That is taller than a 5-story building, and it was built without machines, without metal tools, and without modern engineering equipment. Imagine the effort required. Soil had to be gathered from the surrounding area. It was likely carried in baskets, lifted by hand, and slowly piled up over time. This was not the work of a few individuals. It required planning, leadership, and cooperation. It suggests a structured society with shared beliefs strong enough to motivate such a massive project. The mound was not built all at once. Archaeological studies show that it was constructed in stages. At first, a smaller burial mound was created. Later, more earth was added, covering earlier burials and enlarging the structure. This process may have continued over many years, even generations. Each layer represented another moment of importance, another burial, another ceremony. Inside the mound, early excavations uncovered burial chambers. In the 1830s, long before archaeology became a careful science, excavators dug tunnels into the mound. They found 2 main burial vaults deep within its center. These contained human remains along with grave goods, including ornaments, tools, and decorative items. The presence of these objects suggests that the people buried there were leaders or individuals of high status. It is important to understand that burial mounds were not simply graves. For the Adena people, they likely held spiritual meaning. The mound may have been a ceremonial center, a gathering place, a connection between the living community and their ancestors. Building such a large structure over the dead shows respect, belief, and a deep sense of tradition. One of the more controversial objects connected to the site is the Grave Creek stone. During the 1838 excavation, a small stone with carved symbols was reportedly found inside the mound. The markings did not clearly match known Native American writing systems. Over the years, some claimed it proved contact with ancient civilizations from Europe or the Middle East. Others believed it was a hoax or a later fake. Most modern experts are highly skeptical of its authenticity. Regardless of that debate, the true importance of the mound does not depend on that stone. The mound itself is the real story. As the town of Moundsville grew around the site, the mound experienced unusual treatment. In the 1800s, a hotel was built nearby. At one point, an observation platform was even placed on top of the mound to attract visitors. Tunnels were dug through it for exploration. By today's standards, that sounds careless. But at the time, preservation laws did not exist in the way they do now. The idea of protecting ancient sites was still developing. Over time, attitudes changed. People began to see the mound as something that needed protection, rather than exploitation. It became one of the earliest archaeological landmarks in the United States to receive serious preservation efforts. Today it is part of the Grave Creek Mound Archaeological Complex, which includes a museum dedicated to the Adena culture and other native groups from the region. When you stand at the base of the mound now, it feels calm and grounded. The grass is maintained. A staircase allows visitors to climb to the top. From that high point, you can see the Ohio River Valley stretching out around you. The modern town sits nearby. Cars pass. Houses and buildings line the streets. The contrast is strong. 2,000 years of time sit between the mound's construction and the modern world surrounding it. One of the strongest positives about the site today is its preservation. The mound is protected by the state. It is recognized as a National Historic Landmark. The museum offers educational programs, exhibits, and artifacts that help explain the Adena culture. Students visit, researchers continue to study findings from the site. Awareness is far better now than it was in the 1800s. Another positive is accessibility. Unlike some ancient sites that are remote or difficult to reach, Grave Creek Mound is easy to visit. People can walk up to it, climb it, and physically experience its scale. That direct contact can create a deeper appreciation for ancient history. However, there are also negatives. The early excavations caused damage that cannot be reversed. Tunnels cut through the mound disturbed its original structure. Some burial information was lost forever. Modern development surrounds the site. While the mound itself is protected, the original natural landscape that once framed it has changed. Traffic noise and nearby buildings take away some of the sense of isolation it may once have had. There is also a deeper issue connected to many burial mounds across North America. For many native communities, these sites are sacred. In the past, they were often excavated without consent or cultural understanding. While preservation efforts today are more respectful, the history of disturbance cannot be ignored. In my neutral opinion, Grave Creek Mound is one of the most important historic places in West Virginia. It does not need dramatic legends to make it meaningful. Its power comes from its scale and its age. When you stand on top of it, you are standing on soil carried there by people who lived more than 2,000 years ago. That alone creates a strong connection across time. At the same time, I think it is important to approach sites like this with balance. We should appreciate the engineering skill and social organization of the Adena culture, but we should also acknowledge the mistakes made during early preservation today is strong, but history cannot be undone. The present situation at Grave Creek Mound is stable and well managed. The mound stands intact, covered with grass, open to the public, and supported by an on-site museum complex. The positive side includes official protection, educational programs, and strong recognition of its cultural value. The negative side includes permanent damage from 19th century tunneling and the impact of surrounding urban development. Even with those challenges, the mound remains solid and visible, rising above Moundsville, much as it did over 2,000 years ago. It continues to hold its layered history quietly within its earth, a lasting monument built by hands that shaped the Ohio Valley long before modern America existed. St. Albans Archaeological Site along a bend in the Kanawha River in West Virginia. There is a quiet stretch of land that most people would drive past without a second thought. It does not look dramatic. There are no giant stone walls or standing ruins, just trees, soil, and the steady movement of the river. But under that ground is one of the most important prehistoric sites in the eastern United States. The St. Albans Archaeological Site holds nearly 10,000 years of human history, layered one on top of another. The story of this place came to light in the early 1960s. The river had been slowly cutting into its bank, exposing bits of stone tools. People noticed shaped stones that clearly were not natural. Archaeologists stepped in and began careful excavations. What they uncovered was not just a single camp, but a deep stack of occupations. Layer after layer of soil held signs of people who had come to this same spot across thousands of years. The oldest layers date back to the early Archaic period, roughly 8,000 to 6,000 BC. That means people were camping here not long after the last ice age ended. The climate was changing, forests were spreading, large ice age animals were gone, and smaller game filled the woods. The people who came to St. Albans were hunter-gatherers. They moved with the seasons, following food sources. The river would have been a lifeline. It offered fish, fresh water, travel routes, and animals that came down to drink. What makes this site so special is the way the soil built up over time. Floods from the Kanawha River laid down thin layers of sediment. Each time people camped there, they left behind tools, broken stone flakes, fire pits, and other traces. Then nature covered it gently with new soil. Because of this steady process, the layers stayed separated instead of mixing together. That gave archaeologists something rare. They could see change over time in a clear sequence. In many sites, objects from different centuries get mixed up. At St. Albans, the layers were like pages in a book. When researchers dug down carefully, they could match certain styles of stone points to certain depths. That helped them build a timeline for the region. Different projectile point styles appeared in order, showing how tool design changed slowly over thousands of years. It was not sudden, it was gradual, human, and practical. The artifacts found here were mostly stone tools, projectile points for spears, cutting tools, scrapers for hides, drills, and knives. There were also signs of hearths, places where fires once burned. Charcoal samples helped with dating. The site showed that this riverbank was not a one-time stop, it was a repeated seasonal camp. Groups came back again and again. When you imagine those early people standing by the Kanawha River, it is not hard to see why they chose this spot. The river valley would have been rich with life. Deer moved through the forests, fish ran in the water, nuts and berries grew nearby. The location also offered a clear view along the river, useful for watching game or spotting other groups. Over time, the tool styles changed. Later archaic layers show different shapes of points and different working methods. The changes were small but clear. That slow shift tells a story of adaptation. People were learning, adjusting, and improving what worked best for hunting and survival. There is something powerful about seeing that steady human problem-solving preserved in soil. The site was later added to the National Register of Historic Places. That recognition matters because sites like this are fragile. Once disturbed, the layers cannot be put back. Archaeology is careful and slow because every inch of soil can hold meaning. What makes St. Albans feel almost mysterious is not mystery in the dramatic sense. There are no lost cities here, no buried treasure. The mystery is quieter. It is about daily life. Who were these people exactly? What language did they speak? What stories did they tell around their fires at night? We can see their tools, but we cannot hear their voices. Standing near the river today, it takes imagination to picture that deep past. Modern roads and houses sit nearby. The world has changed completely. Yet under that ground are layers untouched for thousands of years until they were carefully studied. It creates a strange feeling. You are walking above time itself. There are positives and negatives about the site today. On the positive side, it is recognized as important. It helped shape the understanding of early archaic culture in the Ohio Valley region. The research done, their improved dating methods and classification of stone tools, that contribution still influences archaeologists working today. The site is protected under historic preservation laws, which helps guard it from careless damage. On the negative side, it is not a large public park with big displays. Many people in the area do not fully realize how important it is. Parts of the site were impacted before preservation laws were as strong as they are now. River erosion, construction, and development always pose risks to sites near waterways. Nature itself can slowly wear away history. In my opinion, St. Albans is powerful because it is real and grounded. It does not rely on wild claims. It shows that even simple campsites can hold massive importance. Sometimes people expect ancient history to look dramatic, but real history is often quiet. It is small fire pits, broken spear points, and repeated visits to the same riverbank. As a neutral observer, I think the site deserves more public awareness, not in a sensational way, but in a respectful way. When people understand that humans have been standing in that same place for nearly 10,000 years, it changes how you see land. It stops being just property or scenery. It becomes shared human ground. At the same time, I understand that not every site can become a tourist attraction. Increased traffic can damage fragile areas. There is a balance between education and protection. In that sense, its somewhat low profile might actually help preserve what remains. The present situation at St. Albans is stable but quiet. It remains a recognized archaeological site near the Kanawha River. It is protected, but it is not heavily developed for tourism. Some erosion risks remain due to its riverbank location, and development in surrounding areas continues to require careful planning. The positive side is that it is officially documented and valued by researchers. The negative side is that many people pass by without knowing what lies beneath their feet. The site stands today as a silent record of thousands of years of human life, still resting along the river, still holding its layered story in the soil. Arbuckle's Fort. In the hills of Greenbrier County, West Virginia, there once stood a rough wooden fort, built out of fear, hope, and pure survival. Arbuckle's Fort was not a grand stone fortress. It was not designed to impress anyone. It was built because families on the frontier needed protection. In the late 1700s, this land was tense, uncertain, and often violent. Settlers were pushing west, and conflict with native tribes was part of daily life along the borderland. Arbuckle's Fort was constructed around 1774, during a time known as Dunmore's War. That conflict was between colonial Virginia forces and Native American tribes, mainly the Shawnee and Mingo. The Greenbrier Valley was considered the edge of settlement then. Families who moved there were stepping into land that was heavily contested. Captain Matthew Arbuckle, a militia officer, is the man most closely connected to the fort. He was an experienced frontiersman. The fort that carried his name was likely a stockade structure made of upright logs set tightly together, forming a defensive wall. Inside would have been cabins, storage areas, and space for families to gather during attacks. When we talk about a fort in this setting, it is important to picture something simple. These were not large military bases. They were community shelters. During peaceful times, settlers lived and farmed on scattered homesteads. But when danger rose, they retreated inside the fort's walls. It was a place of last defense. Archaeological work at the site has revealed evidence of that frontier life. Post-molds in the ground show where the wooden walls once stood. These dark stains in the soil are all that remain of heavy logs that were cut, shaped, and raised more than 2 centuries ago. Excavations have uncovered artifacts such as musket balls, gun parts, nails, ceramics, and everyday household items. These objects may seem small, but they tell a clear story. Musket balls point to defense and conflict. Nails and hardware show construction methods. Broken pottery hints at cooking and daily meals. This was not just a military outpost, it was a lived space. Children likely played inside those walls. Families cooked over open fires. Men stood guard at night, listening for any sound in the dark woods. The fort existed during a period when the American Revolution was also unfolding. Frontier communities like this were caught between larger political struggles and local survival. Communication was slow. Supplies were limited. The people at Arbuckle's fort had to depend on one another. One of the more tragic and well-known stories connected to the area involves the killing of a native leader known as Cornstalk in 1777 at nearby Fort Randolph. While that event did not happen at Arbuckle's fort, it reflects the tension of the region during that time. Trust was fragile. Violence often followed misunderstanding and fear. When archaeologists study Arbuckle's fort, they are not just mapping walls. They are studying the psychology of frontier life. Every fort in the region tells a similar story of anxiety and defense. Settlers believed they were claiming new land. Native tribes saw encroachment on territory they had lived on for generations. Arbuckle's fort stood right in the middle of that clash. The remains of the fort are not towering ruins. The structure itself is long gone. Wood does not survive centuries of weather. What remains is below the surface. Careful excavation has outlined the shape of the stockade and interior features. It takes trained eyes to see meaning in soil stains and artifact patterns. Standing at the site today, you would not see a dramatic landmark. The landscape looks calm. Fields and trees stretch across the valley. It feels peaceful. That contrast is powerful. It is hard to imagine the fear that once existed here. Guards watching the tree line, families rushing inside at the sound of warning shots. One positive aspect of the site today is that it has been recognized and studied. Archaeological investigation has documented its layout and confirmed its importance. It helps historians better understand how frontier forts were built and used. It also adds depth to the story of early West Virginia settlement. Another positive is that the land itself remains mostly rural. It has not been completely covered by modern development. That helps preserve what is left underground. On the negative side, like many archaeological sites, Arbuckle's fort does not have large public displays or reconstructed walls. Visitors may not immediately understand what they are looking at. Without visible structures, it can feel underwhelming. There is also always the risk of erosion, farming impact, or accidental disturbance. Sites like this depend on awareness and respect. In my neutral view, Arbuckle's fort represents something very human. It is not a symbol of glory or conquest. It is a symbol of survival during a tense time. It also reminds us that frontier history is complicated. There were settlers trying to protect families. There were native communities defending their homeland. Both lived with fear. Both suffered loss. I think sites like this are important because they slow down the story. History often gets simplified into heroes and villains. But when you stand at a place like Arbuckle's fort, it feels more complex. You'll imagine real people making hard choices with limited knowledge. At the same time, I believe these sites deserve careful handling. They should be preserved, studied, and explained honestly, not romanticized, and not ignored. They are part of a shared past that shaped the region. The present situation at Arbuckle's fort is quiet and modest. The original wooden fort no longer stands. What remains are archaeological traces documented through excavation. The land is mostly open and rural. There are no massive visitor centers or dramatic reconstructions. The positive side is that it has been identified and recorded as an important frontier site. The negative side is that it does not receive wide public attention and could be overlooked by those unaware of its value. Today, it rests peacefully in Greenbrier County, a silent reminder of a time when wooden walls once stood against uncertainty on the early American frontier.